for us, trying to get this. So they put me on as an alternate.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Angelica Keene. It is Monday, June 30th. It is currently 5:32, and I am going to go ahead and call this Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee meeting to order. First on the agenda is the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up is public comment. It looks like we do have one public comment. Is that right? I have a Ginger Twiggy.
Twig.
Twig? Okay, sorry. Sorry, I couldn't tell if that was a G or a Y. Sorry.
Not that skinny.
Please.
Yeah, the doctor says so. Just came up here quick because we've been talking about a topic around here about the rumble strips that are along the side of US 1 and A1A, the ones I've gotten to see that have been implemented. I mean, talk louder. I hate microphones. They've become a hazard to some of the cycling routes that have been around here. We have unexperienced cyclists that are learning to ride, and they create a problem if the rider has to get out of the lane. Some of the lanes are not wide enough as designated where the placement of these rumble strips or ABTs have been placed. And I'm very concerned about the safety of the people riding in these areas. When I drove down US 1 and then back up A1A, I noticed the behavior of some of the cyclists to be riding actually in the road and not in the bike lane, designated bike lane, because they felt inhibited by the rumble strips being along the side of the road. So I think that was an interesting behavior change when they have a designated bike lane. I think the best quote I got from one of my customers when I asked him to go out and take a ride around and take a tape measure to see what was up on A1A South. And the quote is the issue I have with them is the difficulty crossing them. It is really easy to catch a tire in the rut and get tossed if you don't cross aggressively and in a decent angle. So why do we need them? Lots of obstacles like trash cans, parked vehicles, debris, dead raccoons need to be avoided. So I guess the question is how many on this board that are talking about bicycles know about the ABTs? Do they ride with it? Because I know a lot of y'all are mountain bikers and never see the road. So I was wondering what your position was, because Indian River County addressed it, and so I was wondering we need to address it for the safety of the riders. This is good. And we'll be talking soon. Thank you.
Wait a minute, Ginger. Can I ask her a question? When you mention rumble strips, I'm familiar with them. You have a bike lane, let's say it's 5 feet wide. How much of that is encroached with the rumble strips?
The one area I saw that I measured, that I had a chance that traffic wasn't too bad, the lane was actually 32 inches wide. The rumble strip itself was 9 inches wide, even though I think they believe in, I've got the stats I'm trying to learn about them. They're supposed to be maximum of 8 inches wide. So it's significant. It's 15 to 30%.
Yeah, see, the 1 inch doesn't make a difference, but riding bicycles myself, we have room in an area.
Yeah.
And in some areas we're on the shoulder and we only have 2 feet.
Yep.
And then that's even less because the edge wears out and you get nasty drop-offs, and then you have vegetation encroaching on it, and when it's covered with green.
Yep.
So 9 inches on a bicycle lane that's, let's say, 3 feet, is only 30% of it, and that's a lot. And A1A isn't that fast nowadays, is it?
The south end that they added this enhancement to is 55, which that's another question I have too that I'll be asking is why is it still 55?
Well, that's why you have the rumble strips. See, because of the lower speed limit, they could get rid of the rumble strips. But the fact that it's 55, you have a rumble strip. And yet there really shouldn't even be a bike lane there, and we're just talking.
Yeah.
Because at 55, you get creamed if there's a bike lane. So and they do it all the time, so there's a lot of glitches in biker safety and vulnerable user safety that we're trying to deal with. And what you're saying is very important because you have a limited bike space, and the rumble strip is kind of rough. If you turn your wheel, you're going to spill. Especially on the light bike, the narrow tires, they're kind of...
I'm a roadie, so yes.
Yeah, they're kind of fragile anyway. So I hear you loud and clear, and I'm sure everybody here hears you too.
All
Well,
right.
thank you for coming, Jim,
No problem.
and bringing that to our attention.
All right, see you Monday.
Ginger,
Yes, yes, sir.
before you sit down, you need to stand up.
Okay.
Now, real quick, you mentioned that Indian River County had addressed it. What did they do?
Well, the application was incorrect from my understanding. Their A1A is beautiful. They have 7-foot buffered bike lanes down there on both sides of the road. The application of the rumble strips or ADTs were applied in the bike lane instead of in the buffer. So that was addressed. They also addressed the spacing and the depth of the rumble strips that were applied.
So they did it right the first time, you're saying?
They did not do it right the first time.
Did they fill them in?
They did go back and fill them in and correct the mistake.
Okay.
So for me, it's just there's certain intersections around here. An examples, we have a club ride that comes out of Rockledge Drive onto US 1 heading south towards the Vieira. Yeah. And the rumble strips are in the bike lane across the intersection, so we either have to wait till the rumble strips gap in order to enter the bike lane, or we have to come in aggressively in an angle. I ride with a few people that are in their late 70s, exquisite health, exquisite fitness, but I don't want them falling on the pavement on my ride. And just be able to maybe fill those in, or certain gaps that cause hazards to us so that we can get into the bike lane properly would be very helpful.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to add, Ginger, that I've taken spills just on grass, where there's a big edge of grass, and I'm not paying attention, and you take them.
All my injuries are from mountain biking, not from road biking.
So, it doesn't take much of an edge to put a lightweight bicycle out of control. So I hear you loud and clear on the rumble strips, and appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Continuing on, we have the reports. We have the Executive Director's Report, Georgiana Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things I wanted to bring to your attention. You have the TPO Governing Board meeting minutes of April the 10th. And at that particular meeting, we just wanted to let you know, the Governing Board approved all the action items, but they also approved the TPO using $500,000 for a pedestrian crossing with a pedestrian hybrid beacon on A1A just south of Taylor Ave in the city of Cape Canaveral. And this was an area that the city had been working on for a long time, as well as a pedestrian study that the DOT did. So that improvement is going to be incorporated into the resurfacing in early 2027 when it will be going into construction. So we were very happy about that. And the Governing Board also held a strategic plan workshop, which was very interesting and very informative. And a couple of the themes, new themes that really came out of that was public engagement and funding. In our strategic plan, funding was not really one of the emphasis areas, but without a doubt, without funding, nothing really happens. So that was really good, and it will potentially help us kind of focus on some different alternatives in the future. You also have the public engagement report for May and June for your information, as well as the TPO project status and updates. And these are projects that the TPO is working on internally in our Unified Planning Work Program. And then finally, you have our Transportation Legislative Summary. It was a very active legislative session this year. Just a few things I wanted to bring to your attention. There is a new law effective July 1st for aspiring drivers aged 15 to 17 will be required to take a driver's education course now to obtain a learner's permit. So I think that is really, really good. Also, House Bill 351, it addressed dangerous excessive speeding and outlines penalties for drivers who exceed speed limit by 50 miles per hour, which is a lot. First offense is 30 days in jail. There was a provision to increase speed limits by 5 miles per hour on certain roads, interstates and other roads, if the DOT deemed it appropriate. But that was amended and that was cut out of the bill, which I think we were happy to see, because I think we all understand that there are times that speed kills, and increasing the speed limit just seems a little counterintuitive. And then I would also like to mention micromobility. It was Senate Bill 462. It really changes the definition of a micromobility device to align with the statewide pedestrian and bicycle safety coalition. And it includes things like e-bikes and electric scooters that have the same duties as a bicycle. It also allows local governments to adopt a minimum age requirement for e-bike operators and provide micromobility and e-bike safety training. So that would be up to the local government to do that, which is good. Let's see what else. Transportation offenses involving death, House Bill 687 also passed. It was referred to as Trenton's Law, which was a young man that was killed by a wrong-way driver in 2023, and it provides enhanced penalties for driving or boating under the influence resulting in death if the perpetrator has a prior conviction. There's also House Bill 85, hazardous walking conditions, and the bill expands the criteria for identifying hazardous walking conditions for public elementary school students who use walkways parallel to a road to walk to and from school. So I think that is an interesting bill as well. And I think that is the only other thing I will mention. The hands-free driving, you know, that's something that keeps coming up over and over. That did not pass, by the way. So no changes in that bill. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay. All right, hearing no comments or discussions or questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
Georgiana, when they were talking about funding, obviously we have tremendous shortfalls. I saw some pretty good press that we got on, in Florida today describing the challenges.
Yes.
So was there any discussion in those meetings or anything about?
How are we going to get there?
Well, no, yeah, of course, but additional funding sources. As far as creating a county transportation trust, much like we do with some of the other type programs, to get that another third leg of funding created locally. I know there's multiple ways to do that, but were there any substantive discussions about that or any reality addressing it?
Not on the board level at this time, but the fact we have discussed it in the long-range plan discussions and in our open house with the public. We had a board that basically displayed all of the different potential funding sources,
Right.
even on the local level. I think that as we move forward, and since this is now an emphasis area for the governing board, I think we've got to dig into it.
Okay.
And we need to have some pretty tough conversations. But we always need to think outside the box when it comes to funding, whether it be grants. They're working on a potentially new infrastructure bill in Congress, and we don't know what that's going to bring. But it seems to me that the state would like to get away from the discretionary grant part of it and do more formula funding. So I think over the next 6 months to a year, we'll know kind of what direction we're going in. We talk about a lot more options. So to be continued, I think we have a lot of work to do in that
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, and I may have mentioned it before, is at least for our bicycle pedestrian, especially our trails program, trying to see if we can create something just dedicated strictly to that with some type of revenue source. Because that's what we do. I mean, yeah, that's what we're, so that, hopefully maybe that can be included in that too, because we may not get an omnibus thing for everything transportation, but since we've had pretty good success with our programs that we've done with trails, that people may be interested in providing a funding source for that.
Well,
So, and I know other places have done it, so I just wanted to just bring that up because I've seen over the years that people left, right, and center really appreciate our trails program and the successes that we've had. So I'm just trying to see maybe piggyback on that, on those successes, and try and work on a funding source for more of our trail projects
I
in
think,
connectivity.
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth having a discussion on. You know, when you look at our long-range plan and you see that we're $200 billion in the hole.
Two point,
Okay.
yeah, 2 point something billion.
It's more than 2 billion.
Yeah, not 200.
Excuse me, yes. Sorry. I think.
Trying to give me a heart attack.
No, sorry. 2 billion. You know, that does not include the bike ped component.
Right, yes.
This is major infrastructure that we need for, you know, our thriving workforce if we want to continue. So I think it's worth a conversation without question. But there's a
Yeah,
lot of
maybe look-
competing interests as well.
Sure, yeah, maybe look at some of the other trails programs around the state and country that maybe gotten dedicated funds for their systems.
I would like to note that those are local funds, so we have no authority over local funds.
Sure.
And that's something that,
That's the
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's part of it, but I could see a coordinated effort though with our successes. So, all right, thank you.
Georgiana, by the enhanced RFB, is that a red light on demand?
pedestrian hybrid.
Right.
Yes, yes,
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't for sure.
that you are correct.
And then I have a comment to make on funding. I work a lot of areas outside Brevard County, and we have such a nice place. And when I tell them we don't have impact fees here, they don't believe me. They think I'm BSing them. They say, come on, you don't have impact fees? I say, no, as nice as this area is. So what can I do about it? Well, I found a person running for office, Katie Delaney, that believes like I believe. And you know, I worked hard to help get her elected, and she surprised everybody and she got elected. And I know for certain that she's one voice for impact fees. She understands what we're losing by letting all this high-priced development get by and putting the expensive infrastructure on us. Now, they tell me that development pays for itself. When I got married on Marco Island, Florida had 6 million people. There's 22 million now. I'm waiting for my rebate check. That development pays for itself. I think I'm owed a rebate check. And with that said, you know, what can you do? You have to get the right people elected that are going to support the correct taxes. Seminole County, they did a referendum and added 1 penny sales tax to their county back in 1990. And they have one of the nicest road systems in Central Florida. So it can be done. We just need the political will to do it, so that everybody's wondering where the money is. Find somebody that's going to support what you believe in, work for their campaigns, and maybe it'll happen.
I think there's lots of opportunity for discussion and research on your own, and continuing funding conversations in very creative ways. So to continue that thought, we have our trails report with Sarah Crom.
All right, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. This is brief kind of intro to what we'll be talking about next month, just to give you guys an update, because I know everyone's been anticipating the 2 trail projects. Next month, we'll be presenting on both of these. So just to give you an update, we did have our public workshops for both the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan and the North Maryland Pioneer Trail. For the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan, we had over 50 in-person attendees, and then around 21 attendees for the virtual component. So very well attended and lots of good feedback. Up on the presentation as well as on your slide is all of the presentations that have been scheduled to present the report out to every, all of the municipalities that are included within the master plan. So lots of opportunity for citizens to continue to be involved. And so what does this mean for you, is what can you do to further the support? Obviously come to the BPTAC meeting in August, but attend any of those Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan presentations. You can make a public comment showing support at any of those presentations, and of course, talk to your local municipalities to advocate for implementation, because we can develop a master plan. Ultimately, if no maintaining agency wants to step up and actually maintain the project and help us pursue funding, then it's a master plan and not a project. Next, we do have our North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail feasibility study, and so this also went through public review. We had over 200 people come out to the in-person public workshop in March, about 18 attendees for the virtual lunch and learn. These are the final presentations, so they'll be coming once again to August here. Obviously, we're not doing North Merritt Island is unincorporated, so we want to be going out to various cities, but just to be further discussed in August. Due to public concerns and feedback, the North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail will not move forward to the next phase of planning, and we'll talk about more of that in August. But just in case some of you might have heard or gotten wind of how that public engagement and us responding to the public, came out, we will go over everything that happened and also what that looks like for the future. And so that concludes my trails report.
Okay, thank you. Looking forward to that report in August. Next up, we have the FDOT report. Stephanie Jones.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to share with you all that the next Florida Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Coalition meeting will be held in Orlando on July 29th and 30th. It'll be at City Hall. So that is a public meeting, and anyone is welcome to attend. We do ask that you let us know if you're planning to attend as a member of the public, and in the agenda package there is some contact information if you're interested in attending. We would love to have you. We also had our Central Florida Safety Summit that was held in Volusia County back on May 9th, and there's a recap video if you weren't able to be there that you can check out on YouTube. And then thinking about the micro-mobility topic, I included in the agenda package a tip card that the Bikehead Safety Coalition has produced to help us understand the different classes of e-bikes. And just wanted to say that we're certainly aware of this safety issue with the e-bikes. We're hearing about it all over the district, and so if there are municipalities who have ideas about how to produce some safety education or training around that, we would love to hear those suggestions and work with you to develop that. There is some stuff out there, and if you're interested, I can share that with you offline. And then just wanted to just acknowledge Ginger's public comment, and that is the rumble strips is an important topic, and we are looking at it, and we'll get a meeting scheduled so we can discuss and get it resolved. Thank you.
Stephanie, on page 31 of the package, you've got that card I think you referenced for the e-bike. Is it correct to interpret that a level class class 1 e-bike is the same thing as a class 3 e-bike with the exception of the speed that it goes? Because I'm reading this thing and I'm surprised at what I'm seeing, and just want to clarify, is that DOT for sure, or did somebody not update the chart, or?
I'm pretty sure it's for sure, yes. It went through extensive review and research, yes.
So a person could be walking down the sidewalk and a bike could be coming at them 28 miles an hour?
It is possible,
Okay.
yes.
And you'd asked if there's any input, I guess, for suggestions for what a DOT could make pedestrian or cyclist travel better. Here I'm on BPTAC, I'm trying to pay attention. I'm sure I could do much better with studying things, but I'm probably more informed as a member of the public as most people, more than a typical person not being privy to some of these meetings and this information. I would have not an idea that a bike is allowed to be coming at me and which side of the sidewalk it's supposed to be on. I don't think the general public has any concept from the pedestrian point of view or the cyclist. And if this is now 20 miles an hour coming at me one way, and I judge left or right wrong, or I'm from England and I choose the wrong orientation on travel, obviously there'd be some problem. So I'm suggesting that there'd be a public education on how to travel the sidewalk. We all assumed we would stay to the right if we're oriented that way, but I don't think that's official anywhere, or being explained. But if this is now essentially qualifying that e-bikes can be traveling legally with no registration up to 28 miles an hour, then the pedestrians, I think, need to be trained on which way to jump, is kind of what it amounts to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that thought. So next on the agenda.
Well,
Nope. Okay.
just for discussion, the Class 3 e-bike that goes up to 28 miles an hour, it's marketed for commuter. It's marketed as a commuter bike. The Class 1 bike is marketed more as a have-fun bike. With wide tires, you go out and have fun with it. You can go out when the wind is blowing hard and, you know, still get your ride in, and that's what it's marketed for. The problem I have is with the Class 2 bikes. Those are the ones that I see folks that look like they had gotten DUIs and lost their licenses, wear dark clothes, no helmet, and they're just buzzing at 20 miles an hour and don't seem to have much respect for anything, let alone the rules of the bicycle road. Also in the city of Orlando, where they rent a lot of bikes, and that could be part of the solution where we have to reduce congestion on the roads, and there's no money to widen the roads. It's like Orlando's doing, where they rent electric bikes everywhere. Those bikes are Class 2. In other words, you could go 20 miles an hour without pedaling, and the folks that rent them do go that fast, and they do go that fast on sidewalks. And being on those sidewalks a lot, for 2 years out of the last 3, I get buzzed at 20 miles an hour on a 5-foot sidewalk without any warning from a quiet e-bike. And if I just turn, I mean, it could really, really hurt just making a turn. So there is a major safety concern, and for me, the #1 safety concern is on the Class 2, where you just flip a switch and go. If it's pedal assist, you're working, and it seems like you're more concentrating because you're working. But if the bike is moving without your concentration and without your effort, you're not paying as much attention as the folks that are cruising, and that's what little I can add to the conversation. And I did talk to Stephanie a little bit about it before the meeting.
Go ahead, last comment.
Thank you. I apologize for taking so much time. Stephanie, real quick, with the idea, I guess it's a Class 2 on steroids. It's not on the chart. It's the bike that goes beyond the 20 miles an hour, that hitting the accelerator, there's no governor built into the mechanics of it. So it can basically be doing 45. It's an illegal bike from what I can sense. It's not covered by DOT. It's obviously not addressed here. Those do obviously exist. We see them all the time. I don't think there's any identification for stamping these bikes in Florida as being, you know, a big letter saying it's a Class 2, Class 3. I don't know what we would call the Class 2 on steroids as I'm talking it, but one that is illegal going too fast. But the thing is, again, the pedestrian wouldn't know. Does the officer know riding past? You know, are we clocking? We're doing speed checks on the sidewalk? Probably not, etc. I'm not trying to be facetious with it, but I'm thinking the biggest challenge is a motorized bicycle that's a Class 2 design from the other definitions, but it's going beyond the 20 miles per hour. So I'm thinking, you know, beyond the 28 miles per hour is the real concern. So if you could, I don't know how to address it, and maybe it would be required that these be tagged visibly enough with some kind of flag, sticker or something. Chip, perhaps the police car could be going past and it would know that it just passed the one on steroids. Yeah, that, I don't know how we would enforce it, but I think we got some real tragedies coming up and we're trying to go for, vision zero here, so thank you.
So, nope. With that, we will be discussing Vision Zero. I think this is a great topic to, if you're not part of the Vision Zero, that you come to those, that you contribute, because I think safety, I think that's more out of the wheelhouse of what this particular advisory committee can do, and we still have a lot on the agenda. So I want this conversation to continue, but I think it's one of those things that we should just put on, moving on to another agenda item later, or adding it on to more conversation at the end.
We can find an agenda item for future meetings to expand upon e-bikes. Specifically, I'm thinking Cocoa Beach is talking about doing an e-bike speed limit enforcement program, so maybe there's an
opportunity. If you don't let me speak, I'm going to speak on every item. If you let me speak, I won't say another word for the rest of the meeting.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. When I was talking to Stephanie earlier, we discussed that bicycles are vehicles in the state of Florida, and we license drivers for vehicles. Why are we letting e-bike drivers not be licensed? And if they have a license, we also discussed that at the very minimum requirements to be licensed, you have to pass a test before you can purchase one to show that you understand the basic rules of bicycling, and that's what I was discussing with Stephanie, and I just want to bring you up to speed for your Vision Zero. And now that I brought you up to speed, my mouth is shut for the rest of the meeting.
Okay, like I said, I do think that's a great, important conversation, and I do think we just want to keep it in the right section. So next on the agenda, we need to look at passing the Advisory Committee Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee meeting minutes from January 27 of 2025. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Can I make a request for?
Absolutely.
Page 31 seems to indicate an attendance sheet. It's in its header, it's referencing 2024, but it's referencing meeting dates 2025. And I just happened to notice on my attendance is not showing up, and yet I'm in the minutes 10 times in hypertext. So I'm thinking that needs some adjustment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other changes or thoughts?
I just want to make a comment, make sure to, I try to get the minutes as accurate, but make sure everyone's signing in as well. I know this group is pretty good, but make sure everyone's.
And I apologize if I did not.
That might have been a reason why you're in the minutes, but not in the attendance, so.
Also in the header is
Okay.
2024.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other changes or suggestions or discussion? Okay. A motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve with the one amendment.
With one amendment. Perfect.
I'll second it.
Okay, Devin seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any of those opposed? Okay.
Angelica, just wanted to, Drew, when you say the amendment, do you mean to the actual meeting minutes themselves, or do you mean to the attendance record, that like spreadsheet document?
I saw it as an attachment to the minutes, hence the minutes would be adjusted according to Robert's rules, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, the amendment was the year though, is that what you're saying? That's the change?
That in my personal attendance line, I don't know, I'm not showing up as being there that night.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to know if I
Yeah,
need to
it's
change the minutes or the attendance record.
I saw no changes outside the attachment.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Angelica, I don't want you to.
Nope, you're good. So we're going to continue on to the draft FY 20, I can't talk today. A list of project priorities. Sarah, take it away.
All right, good. I almost said good morning again. So good evening, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. Just for reference, within your agenda package, as well as also at your space, You have a copy of the list of project priority maps, as well as also a much more legible list of project priorities because it's printed 11 by 17. We do recognize that it is quite small in the 8.5 size, but within your agenda package, you also have the maps, the list of project priorities, and then also the presentation, which we'll review this evening. So just a little bit of a review is annually the Space Coast TPO adopts a list of project priorities. This is a required document that basically is used to communicate what our priorities for funding and implementation are for state and federal funds. So we start off with our long-range transportation plan, which is updated every 5 years. We are in that update cycle, and Nick will be presenting on our draft Advanced 2050 LRTP here shortly. And really that defines the priorities as well as also the financial resources of the LRTP. And then projects within the long-range transportation plan are able to be taken out of the LRTP by local municipalities through our call for projects and basically be prioritized for funding. And that essentially puts them on like a wait list. Once the projects are funded, then they move into the Transportation Improvement Program. So, as we mentioned, we're on the bridge connecting the LRTP, so connecting the planning to the money. So the annual list of projects, these projects are submitted by local partners that are requesting federal and state funding. If you are looking for our local funds, you are not required to be on the list of project priorities. This is specifically for state and federal transportation funds. It's performance-based and outcome-driven, and it's prioritized based on project readiness, as well as also a quantitative scoring around safety, transportation land use, resiliency and sustainability, innovation, and multimodality. So the procedure that the list of project priorities follows is ranking and scoring, which follows a procedure PR 07-01. Excuse me. And it ranks based on the quantitative score on those 5 criteria that I mentioned. Within that criteria, there's 20 points each, and there's a lot more details. As well as also discretionary ranking, which committees and board members can move can vote to move a project based on ranking. However, our governing board has ultimate approval, and we had quite a bit of that happen in May, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Projects are also based according to readiness and a finish what we started direction. So if a project only needs construction, it's automatically gonna, regardless of quantitative scoring, it's gonna pop up at the start. If you've invested in that project, we want to keep the momentum of that project going and get something built. So what's new this year? So we did not conduct our annual call for projects this year. That was a decision that we made based on several items. One, we're in the middle of updating our 2050 LRTP, and as you'll see when Nick presents, it's going to impact our list of project priorities next year significantly, and so we didn't see the point of adding more projects when next year there's going to need to be less projects based on funding, which, as I mentioned, Nick will get in there a little bit more. And so that was one of the biggest reasons. Also, as we'll see in this later presentation, we don't really have the money available for us to be programming project priorities at this time. So really, we didn't want to set a false expectation of adding additional projects. We also have a really robust and wonderful list of project priorities, so we need to focus on those priorities. So the scores were updated on the latest state of the system and high injury network. We also moved the COCO multimodal station to the SIS list, and we will be pursuing SIS designation. We made the decision to separate the regionally significant projects in a state and a non-state list. We felt like this better communicated to FDOT our priorities in regards to state funding, as well as also traditionally we have pursued funding with our SU funds non-state projects. So really they're not necessarily competing projects, so we didn't want to continue to have them on the same list. For consistency, the I-95 PD&E from St. John's Heritage Parkway to Fisk was added. And then there was quite a bit of discretionary ranking by our Space Coast TPO governing board. So this slide outlines all of the discretionary ranking that our governing board went through in May. And so as you can see, there was quite a bit of movement, specifically on the CIS list. I would like to note that CIS projects are traditionally funded by a CIS-specific pot of money. And FDOT ultimately has the authority of those funds. We provide the priority list. And Nick will talk about that a little bit more. There was quite a bit of movement on the CIS list, and that is reflected in the draft that you received. As far as the regionally significant, State Road 524 was moved from number 3 to number 2, and so really 524 and 501 swapped places. And then with the regionally significant Babcock Street, the 4B Conveyor to Malabar was moved up to number 2. So those are the changes that our governing board made in May. Also, we moved these 5 fully funded projects off of the list of project priorities. Once a project is fully funded and under construction, we feel confident that we no longer need to express it's a priority. That was the Jackson Ave Complete Street, Ellis Road widening, which is very exciting news that we have funded it, or rather, a partnership with FDOT and our local municipalities through a SIP loan has funded it. State Road 3 Safety Project, which is going to be doing sidewalks and some access management from Catalina Isle to the 528 eastbound ramps. Georgiana mentioned the A1A PHB mid-block crossing earlier. And then in the outer year of 2029, we were able to fund ITS, Intelligent Transportation System, on Malabar Road. We also had some completed projects, and so these projects have been moved off. So US 192 and Hollywood Evans intersection improvements. There's a little bit more, massaging that project out there, it seems, because we were just out there on Friday, but for the most part, it's done. The State Road 405 NASA Causeway Indian River Bridge is open, and people are using it daily to get to and from the Space Center. The State Road 520 complete street improvements, which some of that is pictured in the picture on the screen. And then there was also a safety project on Clear Lake, which has been completed as well. So we are getting things done. They're a little, they're slow, but it takes time, it takes money, but we are getting some things done. So as far as the draft goes, I'm not going to go through every single project. I do want to note that within your PowerPoint, I did note on every single project that includes bike ped trail facilities, whether or not it includes bike ped trails. You're not going to see a lot of that on your strategic intermodal system. These are your limited access roadways, I-95. We don't want to stick a trail on I-95. However, through partnership with FDOT, there is the commitment that the State Road 528 projects will include a separated trail that will eventually be part of the East Coast Greenway. Regionally significant, as you'll note, we have the #1 project is the Fiskroy Wall intersection. This is because it only requires construction. It does include improved crosswalks that connect into the sidewalks that are already there. Some other projects that I'd like to mention is the State Road 405. Now, this is a corridor study, and so the defined multimodal improvements aren't there. It's not defined yet. Right now, everything's on the table. Obviously, would like to encourage you, the public meeting is going to be coming up here in a couple months. Would love to encourage you that if this is an area that you're passionate about and you'd like to ensure that the right multimodal improvements are put in place, please get involved. As far as moving on to the rest of the state roadways, you'll notice most of these are intersections, and they all, actually specifically the 2 US 1 projects, are really focused on improving pedestrian safety at those intersections. As far as the non-state roadway goes, you'll notice that Malabar and Babcock both include trail improvements, and then the intersections are looking at crosswalks. So the Transportation Systems Management and Operations list, you're not going to necessarily see specific bike ped improvements called out. This is really focused on adding the technology. There is technology out there, and that can improve bike ped safety, so it's not off the table, but obviously this is more focused on efficiency and moving the system. The bicycle and pedestrian list, you'll notice that every single project is currently on state roads. I would really like next year to, you know, crack open the bike ped master plan with our local municipalities and see how we can potentially be adding some additional projects that aren't necessarily state roads. We also have the shared use network or Sun Trail. Space Coast Trail remains fully funded. And then the other two, the US 1 East Coast Greenway project, you know, the design was funded, but currently there is no construction funding. And then the last section of the Space Coast Trail, currently no action at all. So that's our list of project priorities, and now we get to where the money is. And so as you can see, we have some really slim years coming up. Part of this is that we've already programmed out on other projects. Specifically, some of the projects are projects that we're trying to keep projects that were already funded whole. So for example, there's been a lot of inflation. The NASA sidewalk in Melbourne and the Michigan Trail in Cocoa are both just two examples of projects that we funded 5 years ago, and now we're getting some construction estimates coming in, and we're having to continue to keep those projects going, because obviously we want to make sure we finish what we started. So we do have some slim years coming up, but you know, hopefully we'll see what the future funding conversations happen, and you know, maybe we'll be able to try to squeeze some pennies out and get some other projects going. So with that, is there any questions about the list of project priorities? All right, well then I would like to request approval of the list of recommending approval to our governing board for the list of project priorities.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Approve the project priorities.
Alan, I'm making a motion.
I'll second it.
Devin seconded. Any discussion, thoughts? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, excellent. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is approved.
Sarah, I just had
Yeah.
one quick question, and I am so glad that you put the crosswalks, the trails, wherever they are, because some of these projects are widenings, and some of these are intersection improvements. So if we're widening, and then we're widening intersections at the same time, some of the projects are different. We're crossing distances for pedestrians are longer, and then with these, when you're adding additional lanes, we've got the problem now with speed coming into these intersections. So I guess my question, and then also whether these are going to be lit or not. So I mean, who's going to be looking at what best practices are in this on these projects for our for our interests here? That's my concern, because are we doing the minimum that FDOT standards will require? Are we going to be doing something a little better with best practices that we know that are out there? That's my concern with these widenings and with the intersections where we're widening. So I guess what are we getting, and who's looking at it, and who's coordinating that type of review?
So lighting is a little bit trickier, because you know, basically you have to have someone who wants to maintain it, as well as also coordination with FP&L. And you know, I've mentioned this before, that we have on the books that we'd like to do a lighting study. We regretfully did not get the Road to Zero grant. We are looking at where else within our budget we can fund the lighting and speeding study. But in regards to every single one of these widening projects goes through a very thorough process with stakeholders and public involvement, where people, you know, not only the local municipalities and the local partners, but also the public have the opportunity to express their concerns. You know, and actually specifically Malabar was brought to this group. Both Malabars has been brought to this group at least once. And so I don't want to, there definitely, it's not going, let's slap the bare minimum on this. It's really considering what is the community, what's the context of the community, what does the community want? You know, if we're going to spend $100 million widening this roadway, we want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I'm just interested in this, you know, the standard that's going to be done, because sometimes the FDOT standard is not, the minimum is not really ideal for some of our applications. So.
Well, currently the only project that doesn't have like, isn't defined what you're getting is the 405. All of these other projects have gone through the initial studies. And so if you have a specific project, I'd be happy to get you in touch with the project manager. I mean, I'm pretty good at just throwing out what every project includes, but I don't want to misquote myself because that's, but.
Sarah, I will mention, Ellen, that, you know, these widening projects are looking at the ultimate. It doesn't mean that the department can just do anything. They're using taxpayer money, but these are engineers, professional engineers that are looking at the latest best practices and you know, they're looking at all of it. Everybody's at the table. The local governments, they're looking at the context of the community, they're listening to the community. The challenge is that, you know, once you're in a PD&E and you've identified all these improvements and it sits on the shelf, then that's where it just kind of gets old. And then it moves into design, and then the design has to be updated to bring it up to the latest standards. But what they identify up front is the ultimate for the benefit of the community.
Yeah, I guess I just need to be more comfortable with what the standard is. I gotta do some more homework on my own.
Well, every
But,
project is different.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're
we're
different, but
determining
there are best practices that can be applied to certain scenarios that should be the baseline, and then you go from there. So, yeah, I respect your comment, and I'm glad that it's happening.
that.
but
I have no doubt.
This is how we've gotten to where we require Division 0. We haven't had that coordination in the past. We had very poor standards and very poor application, you know, out there. That's why we've gotten into these situations. So my concern is that when we have a state project or a local project or a combined project, that we're getting, you know, we're applying the best practices, and we're getting that in our new, especially in our new projects. So.
Well, the department has always coordinated with the TPO and the local government since I've been in this business. Have they done everything that we wanted? No, but come a long way in regarding the design of a project, for sure.
Thanks.
Sarah?
Yep.
Quick question on the State Road 514, the widening is in the draft on that.
514.
Ballard.
Yes.
Yeah. There was discussion in January, a request to reinvestigate the trail crossing there.
Yeah.
And that was when the 514 PD&E was basically hosted various sites. There were a lot of people interested in some kind of effort there. And I think at this point, the widening, albeit not with the turnabouts and such in the current, still needs to be addressed on that. And I just, if you're giving us the option to talk to the project manager, I'd like to contact that person, if that's okay.
Okay, since that PD is on the shelf, I will have to dig and figure out who exactly would be your best person, but I can at least, and I'm glad you brought that up, we can definitely follow up with, I believe it was Mike Sanders,
Okay.
who I previously was, you know, had tried to get you in touch with about the crossing. But I'm not sure there's a current project manager on the PD&E because there's no movement. Yeah.
Okay. Just didn't want it to drop out of the queue.
It is, you know, on our list of project priorities as number 6, as well as also, just stealing Nick's thunder, but it's just proof of just how integrated the LRTP and list project priorities are integrated, as we do have, I believe we have it funded for design within the 2050 LRTP, so it's possible to potentially get some more momentum going. Yeah, but we can talk more. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Continuing on, moving right into the draft advance of the 2050 Long Range Transportation Planning. Nick Leff with HDMR, please take it away.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. Yes, I'm here to present the draft cost feasible plan for the Advanced 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan update. So as a little overview, we've seen this graphic just prior to this. The long range plan is really the start of that bridge of bringing those projects into implementation through the Transportation Improvement Program. As part of this, what we have to do is forecast the travel demand of both people and goods,
and really identify those mobility needs for the next 25 years. Make sure we're prioritizing those projects and those funding to continue those projects that are cost feasible throughout the plan, and make sure that you can deliver them for implementation. So it's kind of building upon what Sarah was talking about with that list of project priorities, which was really the first 10 years of the last 2045 long-range plan. But we'll get into it a little bit more detail as we're getting into the 2050 of where that kind of stands within the cost feasible plan. So where we are right now, we have the financial resources, we know it's available, and we have this draft list of projects that we believe we can fund through the year in the horizon year 2050 based on the funding that we have available. Now we know that there are discussions about needing of more funding, but this is the financial resource that we have based on that formula funding that we know will be there through 2050 through the federal and state sources. It really doesn't include a lot of the local funds. We consider those as more complementary towards the plan, but we'll get into that in a little bit more as I get into the plan. So advancing the plan, wanted to look at our 4 major goals: safety, linking the transportation and land use, multimodal options, and sustainability and resiliency. And that's where the plan all focused around as we started developing not only the additional needs, but really developing that cost feasible plan to help support those goals of the region. So within this, I said what needs to be in the long range plan is those identification of needs. What is needed out there as part of that, and also looking at those federal and state revenues through the year 2050 to develop a fiscally constrained cost feasible plan, meaning we can't spend more money than we have available. But not just the total amount of money that's available through 2050, we actually only have that in 5-year increments. So we can't even spend beyond what we have forecasted for 5 years. You have to kind of plan for that, making sure we're staying within our means. And before, as we were talking about what were cost feasible projects, were anything that was included in the plan, whether it was a design phase or a PD&E phase, it was always considered cost feasible. Now those are considered partially funded. Cost feasible projects need to be considered all the way funded through construction, meaning that way we know that that project will be complete through the horizon year 2050, and the rest are there as they're advancing forward. But there isn't any misconception that that project will be done by 2050 just because we funded, say, that first PD&E phase. Which is why collaboration is so important. We wanted to get this out there to make sure that everybody understands not only how the plan is, but what are their priorities and what are the priorities out there, and making sure that there's still the priorities that are moving forward, not only with the list of priority projects that we just talked about right now, but even beyond that through the year 2050. So the LRTP needs to align the priorities with the stakeholders and make sure that we have what's going on in the environment in the region today. You know, that's why we update it every 5 years. It can't just sit stagnant. We have to make sure that we know what the growth and development and where things are changing. Just as a little anecdote, I remember doing this plan a long time ago, and at that time, the space shuttle program was starting to go down. So at that point, we were estimating less traffic going over the barrier islands. Well, looking at this plan now, we're estimating a lot more traffic going over those islands than we did 15 years ago. So that's where we need to update these plans every 5 years and make sure we're focusing on those projects and priorities. So here's where we went through that needs list and prioritization process. We started with 2045. We didn't want to throw out all the projects that we already knew were needs out there. It's what do we know are out there and how do we continue moving forward. We reviewed the Transportation Improvement Program and the work program. We said with the new focus on let's finish what we got started, making sure there's not something lingering sitting there on the shelf. Let's try to get those done. And then we really identified those additional projects and priorities that really support comprehensive plans and any of that new growth that may be out there through the year 2050 to make sure that those plans are aligned, not only with the state and federal funding, but your local plans as those developments are coming through with impact fees and other projects to help support the transportation network. And then also identify any of those additional projects that are needed out there just to make sure that we have them identified. Not necessarily that we can fund them through the cost feasible plan, but this is the time that we all collaborate to make sure that we understand what those transportation needs out there through the year 2050. So as we started going through, we divided up the list into what were those roadway needs, which were the widenings, what else would be needed for technology, improving traffic, TISMA, transportation systems management technology, or intelligent transportation infrastructure, where are our freight and cargo gaps, bicycle pedestrian, and then passenger and transit, all part of the needs list. Still with an emphasis on those complete streets and resiliency projects, Also kind of building on those planning efforts that the TPO has been doing over the past 5 years, a kind of combination of all that with the 2045 plan that was done previously. And I don't want to leave out that this was also, the transit development plan was done in parallel, that we adopted that earlier. We wanted to make sure we had those same horizon years within the transit plan as the long range plan, so we're kind of talking from the same thing to their mouth as we're putting projects for implementation into that transportation improvement program. So their plan is at the 2035 horizon, which kind of fits within our first 5 years of our long range plan for programming projects. So the process went through, utilize our existing process right now. Previously, long-range plans have developed a different process in determining what should be cost feasible and moving forward. And then you have that list of projects, and then you come in annually and you talk about, all right, well, what should move forward next? What's our next 5th year? They don't always align. So what we wanted to do is make sure this plan was talking in the same point and was continuing with those great efforts that the TPO has been doing over the past 5 years. And continuing with that process and the prioritization process, performance-based actually prioritization process that they have. So looking at this performance-based ranking and the projects that you had in front of you as the list of priority projects, we compared those results. What's changed, what's moved, and then how do those really affect not only the projects but funding. So the priority list itself is a linear list of where you have your regional projects, your CIS projects, and do align some funding. But other funding sources are kind of specific. So for example, state funds can only be used on state roads, or the federal funds can be used on other roadways. So in previous plans, we may have had more state funding, so you saw more state roads on the priority list. Here we have a little bit more federal funds than previously, so you're seeing a little bit more non-state roads on that list moving forward, especially within the cost feasible plan. So that's how things change over those 5 years, and that's that funding eligibility for that cost feasible plan. But in this case, it's really aligning quite well with your list of priority projects and moving along some of those projects that have kind of remained stalled along with the state side and on the regional significance side. So they were prioritized based on safety, transportation and land use, resiliency and sustainability, innovation and multimodal. Aligned very well with the goals I just presented earlier, the 4 goals. So that way we are still moving these projects forward, aligning with those goals and objectives, not only of the plan, but of the TPO. So it considered, this process really considered those funding shifts, like I said, from more of a state-focused to more federal funds actually being available for the TPO for this plan itself. Really wanted to finish what we started, so building from that list of priority projects, making sure those are done first before we start moving into those new needs. And then not all projects, like I said, are eligible for the same funding sources. State funds have to be spent on state roads, though those federal funds can kind of cross between state roads and regional roads. And that's where we have a little bit more of a different flavor to this cost feasible plan than, say, the 2045. So now some of the funding challenges that we had to go through with this plan. It wasn't all, we don't find this guy. So looking at the cost feasible, most fully funded projects have to be fully funded through the construction phase, as I mentioned earlier. It is no longer considered cost feasible if you're just funding the PD&E. So the list looks a little bit shorter, or the colors look a little bit less than previously, because we assumed all of those as cost feasible, but we're just categorizing them a little bit differently, and that's a shift. Also, there's been a shift to discretionary funding versus formula funding. So that left a little bit of a hole in kind of our future of what we were forecasting for what funding would be available through 2050. For example, through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the carbon reduction funds actually were sent back to DC, as those were not now a reasonable source of funding to be used through 2050 to plan for. We had to kind of take those out of our funding equation as we were looking at the cost feasible plan. And some other things that we had to consider, increased stormwater rules. So these projects are going to cost a little bit more than they did before if we need more right-of-way needed for stormwater. Also, the lack of available mitigation credits could be costing a little bit more for environmental. And really, we've seen the cost of construction go up quite significantly over the past couple of years. So here's what I was trying to explain with the shift in funding. So previously, when we had funding for the last long-range plan, 25% of the funds in the plan were federal and 75% state, which is why you saw a lot more state roads within that long-range plan. That has shifted. So even though the state still has their strategic intermodal system, which kind of remains whole, that's the major system up top, the two kind of buckets in the middle, which were the state highway systems and those other arterials, that's where we started seeing that shift. So the state funding went down a little bit, but then the overall federal funding went up within the region. But that's kind of consistent a lot with what the state's policy and the guidance has been kind of moving forward, where they've really been focused on, based on state statutes, preserving their system and maintaining their system, which has left a lot less available for that capacity or discretionary uses as they're developing that work program. And that kind of went into our forecast of what we were starting to see within state funding. So looking at the difference between the last plan and this plan, you can see in the lighter blue is that state funding has gone down significantly, but the federal funds went up slightly, but we're still looking at a decrease in our overall plan of about $700 million. So we're forecasted to fund about 9% of that $2.6 billion needs that we have available. So I'm going to go through the draft cost feasible plan, just kind of briefly of how we developed it and then what the results were of that. So from going from the needs to cost feasible, again, we analyzed what the conditions were, talked to the public, looked at the environment, took that development of that needs list, made sure we have all of those needs through 2050, prioritized it based on the process that's used for your current list of priority projects. So we're talking from the same list, trying to continue that. So next year you will see that continuation of that next project. And then really development of that cost feasible plan is putting the money where the project can go and where it is eligible. Quite a bit of public engagement. We had 9 working group meetings. That was with the staff and also some stakeholders within the region. Also, quite a bit of 80 plus local leaders and partners helped kind of kick this meeting off. We had 4 public workshops. In June, we also had an open house where we presented this draft in one virtual webinar. So we're quite a bit of engagement as we started developing this plan and really confirming that we're on the right direction from the last one and moving with this one. So the projects right now, the cost feasible plan, these are the ones that are seeking federal and state funds only. It does not consider the local funding. That is there kind of complementary within the region, kind of helping out these plans, but is not contingent on those local funds. I said again, the projects have to be fully constructed to be considered cost feasible. The rest will be in the plan itself, but they'll be considered partially funded through that time frame. When I mentioned fiscal constraint, it has to be within those 5-year increments. You can see the bars of the left of the revenues versus the expended. We always have to expend less than we have available, and that goes all the way through the horizon year in fiscal year 2050. So these were all based on the list of project priorities that you just saw in front of you a few minutes ago. So what we are trying to do is finish those priorities that we have right now and started. Unfortunately, that does not mean we can finish the whole list of project priorities based on the funding that we have available. But, based on DOT's policy, we're still trying to advance a lot of the bicycle, pedestrian, and trails projects within the region. So we still have a couple of mechanisms for that, and then you'll see in a minute when I go through kind of the cost feasible list, we've kind of boxed some funds to advance not only the Vision Zero, but the bicycle pedestrian master plan and complete streets work. Even though we do have that kind of funding shortfall on all the regional roads, we have set aside some to make sure we still are advancing multimodal efforts. You still have the Sun Trails program, and then as we go through the list of cost feasible projects, you'll see listed in there where there are sidewalks or trails or crossings within each one of these, even though there are some widenings, as was mentioned earlier. So I'll go through these pretty quickly so that way I can make sure to save some time to answer some questions. These are the 6 projects that are there, very consistent with what was just presented in the list of priority projects. But these are really the purview of the Department of Transportation and central office. This is the state strategic intermodal system. We adopt these by reference, and they're really supportive of the overall plan, but we do prioritize them and have some influence in trying to make these moving forward. But that funding is up to central office. As was mentioned before, the Cocoa Station is included in here, but it's not competing in the long-range plan with those regional projects or that state and federal funding, the bars that I showed you earlier. Going through the regionally significant cost feasible projects, as you can see, very similar to your list of priority projects, but included in there also are the sidewalks or trails. But we have, as you may have noticed, that the cost differences between the list priority projects and the cost feasible are different. That's because this is a year of expenditure. We're spending these funds in year 2031 through 2035, which are a little bit more costly than present day value, which is why it costs a lot more as we wait to do these projects in the future. So again, going through some of those priorities, we have State Road 524 included, State Road 405 in the cost feasible projects. State Road Malabar Road, as we just discussed, we're partially funded through design, so that will be the opportunity to refresh and look at that crossing, as you mentioned, and that will be in 2031 and 2035 as we see the funding. Babcock Road, as we're trying to include some right-of-way, and then Minden Road. Still some more Babcock as we're trying to increase the right-of-way and move that forward. The Washingtonia extension was included as a PD&E, so as moving that forward, not necessarily through construction is cost feasible. This is that first initial phase as we talked about. And then Norfolk extension is in there as it's going to be continuing forward after the study. Some of the other complementary projects that will be developer funded, Spyglass, Stadium Parkway, and then the Williamson Boulevard. And then Hollywood and then Wickham are both looking for some different funding sources that would be coming from the state, not really impacting the long-range plan, but in there to know that these projects will be there in the future to help with that horizon. But this is where you'll be more interested in, is the other funding sources. So when we were looking at developing this cost feasible plan, we wanted to set some box funds aside, knowing that there were very limited funding to really implement the current list of priority projects. So versus listing all of the bicycle pedestrian master plan projects out into a long-range plan or Vision Zero projects, we boxed the funding. So looking at the pedestrian and bicycle master plan implementation, we boxed all of the TA funds, meaning that annually as the call for projects come, these funds should be available to help advance some of those phases for your high priority projects within that master plan. That way also you don't need to update the long-range plan or amend the long-range plan anytime you have a new bike, ped, or trail priority. That's part of your master plan. You can amend your master plan as you're moving that into your list of priorities. This is also the case for your Vision Zero projects. We boxed some funds there. Now these don't have to necessarily always come out of your Vision Zero master plan. This could be something where there's a resurfacing project and there's an opportunity to put a rapid flashing beacon or a crosswalk in there. This will allow some of that flexibility with those TPO dedicated funds to help augment some of those projects as they're coming forward into the transportation improvement program and not waiting for the long-range plan or a project to take 5 years for that project, for the funding to become available. And we did the same thing with the ITS master plan and then identified that the Florida Shared Use Trails program is in there for additional funding. Hopefully we'll receive more within the region to help support the implementation of the long-range plan. So I'll pause there just for a second, just asking about the boxes if there are any questions before I just move into the next one.
I have a question.
Todd.
The projects that are identified as other funded projects, which are developer funded, are those projects fully development funded? Are there any public funds identified for those projects at all? Or are they just clearly for the developer to fund?
For our purposes, right now we're assuming there are no federal or state funding. Now I don't know if there's anything between an agreement with the local government and developers that I don't have included in the plan, but I can't answer that. I don't know.
All three of those three projects are within the Viera PDI, and so those were previously discussed projects between, agreements with the Viera company and Brevard County. With no public money.
That I couldn't answer.
In your selection, in your prioritization exercises, we've had some federal changes on equity and low-income communities, and there used to be some in-prioritization in your selection process. That's usually been part of your formulas. Has that been altered at all lately, or not, especially for federal-related projects?
There, in practice, there is no changes. There is simply in the title. So rather than using the word equity, we're discussing areas of persistent poverty. But as far as actual policy and practice and the planning effort, there's absolutely no change.
So it's good to hear. So thank you.
And that was considered through the prioritization of the cost feasible plan, consistent with how your projects were just prioritized right there.
Thank you.
You know, we have included, you know, transmission disadvantage, equity in areas of persistent poverty in our planning before the IIJA, and so we just are continuing to be consistent with our policies.
Well, thank you for that effort, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Last but not least, sorry, so we do also have transit included in the plan, as we did develop the transit development plan along with the long-range plan for this purpose, to keep with the same horizon here, and so we can advance transit with the multimodal projects and the TPO and Space Coast Area Transit can plan together. So with that, our next steps, we're going to be going to technical and CAC in July, along with the governing board for this draft, opening up to public comment period, get some comments, and then looking to adopt this in September. With that, I'd be happy to open up and answer any more questions about the cost feasible plan or the long-range plan itself.
Hi, yes, I have a question. You mentioned collaborating and aligning your goals with what, is that with FDOT? So if they're here, are they with, what are you aligning them with?
Actually, we're aligning with everybody. So yes, we need to align our goals and objectives not only with the Florida Transportation Plan and the state plans, but also as the state statute. We need to align goals and objectives in our projects with your comprehensive plans locally to make sure that they are consistent. So that way we are all talking forward, looking at that growth of both people and goods, and making sure that we have our roadways, and this is the forum for discussing kind of those priorities and moving those forward. So yes, we try to align all plans. So we looked at your goals and objectives within each comp plan and align those with Complete Streets Vision Zero.
Okay, so these are aligned with, like, for example, what FDOT's trying to achieve in innovation. These plans are also achieving whatever metric. I guess I'm missing the part that those projects achieve the multimodal innovation, resiliency, sustain. How do they do that?
So not only that, is we also have aligned our performance metrics. So with the Department of Transportation, we support DOT's performance measures for safety, state of good repair, and systems performance. So we're all aligned not only with those and also with the prioritization.
So Lily, what I think you're looking for is like, where are the actual like objectives, performance measures, and targets?
Yes.
And so a LRTP takes about 2 years to accomplish, and that's one of our very first tasks. So I recognize that you're new to the city, and so we went through that process about 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago. And so they are available on our website, the more detailed, breakout of each of those objectives. And so some of this that Nick presented was summarized because we've been working on this for a while. So I'm happy to get with you on, and share that matrix that shows everything. But as I said, I believe it's on our website as well.
Okay.
And that's great feedback. When I present this next time, I'll mention that the goals are aligned with not just, we didn't create this out there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think my third question, or second, being a part of working for the city too, is is there a call out for what cities should be doing to also align? I know we have Vision Zero and we have the resolution, but beyond doing that, like, are we being asked or tasked with anything?
Ideally, after the adoption plan, it's continued coordination with the TPO as growth and development occurs, as we're developing a list of, we don't have to develop a list of needs every 5 years or talk about this every 5 years. It could be something that's ongoing throughout this, not only prioritization process, but just the ongoing transportation plan collaborative. We're going on, we're changing this. Let's make sure our goals are aligned, and here's the forum to discuss it.
Okay.
Nick, quick question. Ellen addressed the question partially, and I think that was very appropriate. The federal changes that we're seeing that are not, I'm not sure anybody can predict what's going on. I'll try to be more political here. But with the fact that we're seeing extreme changes at the federal level with what was anticipated or previously projected funding, if we have significant cuts that impact something in the prioritization to where that is no longer anticipated to be fully funded, as you addressed, under the new ruling or the projection that it's funded through for construction, it's going to radically change things if you encounter heavy-duty hits on the funding. If that changes, is it pretty much appropriate to assume that that not fully funded item, if that does occur, it would just drop down, the funding would roll to the next level priority? Thank you.
I think I'm understanding, and maybe I can use the 2045 and now this 2050 planning. So our 2045, or list of project priorities that you saw last year, developed from the 2045 long-range plan, was a subset of the total cost feasible plan. We are at a point right now where we can't fund even the full list of project priorities. So it's still automatically a subset. Doesn't mean we've stopped planning or these projects aren't moving forward. It just means we have less of a focus, for lack of a better term, with our state and federal funding, meaning instead of having 25 projects that we're trying to make sure to get going in the next 5 years, we have a focus of 5 that we know we need to get funded in the next 5 years, and here's how the plan is identified that these are the priorities to try to get that funding moving, because if not, then the next 5 years are impacted as we're updating the next long-range plan, which is why we do it every 5 years, understanding that funding changes, politics change, but how do we make sure that we're keeping the plan moving and aligned? And that's why it may be a different, it may look different, but our projects and our priorities are still the same priorities that the TPO has really had. We're just now trying to finish them with a little bit more focus on, that's all we have, so we really got to get these done.
And Drew, if there are any major changes in funding, where there's additional funds or, funds continue to be cut, then within the next 5 years, then we would have to do an LRTP amendment, and that does go through our governing as the process.
And public also.
And correct, and it must be out for public comment.
Any change that's recorded would be communicated and go through?
Correct, yeah.
All right, okay.
Yep, there's our public participation plan outlines a very specific process that we have to go through to do an LRTP amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, very good discussion. I am looking for a motion to approve the long-range plan.
Motion to approve the draft.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. The draft plan, thank you.
I'll motion to approve the
Okay.
draft.
Craig Smith first. Anyone willing to second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay, Devin. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Stephanie, you plan, or you got it?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job, Nick. All right.
5 years.
We have a few minutes, sorry, I don't remember my backwards. We have a few minutes left. We have the Vision Zero Action Plan with Patty Winslet.
And Patty's gonna do this really, really, really quick so that we can get out.
Don't worry, I'll talk fast.
Get out.
All right, good evening, Patty Rendon, Transportation Planner. I'll be presenting the 2024 Vision Zero Annual Report highlights before going into a bit more detail on the Signal 4 crash data. So from 2018 to 2022, there were 427 deaths and 2,317 serious injuries on Brevard County roads. The Space Coast TPO and local partners adopted a Vision Zero to combat this crisis, aligning with state and federal initiatives to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. This annual report supports the updated Vision Zero Action Plan, which was adopted in February 2024, and also aligns with FDOT's target of 0 fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. To give you some highlights from the 2024 wins, we worked with 34 collaborative partnerships, met with 12 law enforcement agencies, engaged 6 community partners in high injury network areas, and distributed free safety materials and resources to 35 communities. This year, in addition to the rail crossing elimination grant, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant was awarded to the City of Palm Bay for the Emerson Drive project, which includes a sidewalk extension and speed management and will improve safety for vulnerable road users, especially near local schools. The Space Coast TPO also received the FDOT D5 Outreach Award at the inaugural Central Florida Safety Summit for the work done to spread safety messaging to our community. The report also showcases some of the outreach activities and partnerships, including with local law enforcement and participating in the Central Florida Safety Strategic Plan Steering Committee meeting. These collaborations on transportation safety, along with our robust digital safety campaigns, are part of the efforts to connect with the community and advance the Space Coast TPO's Vision Zero priorities. The Space Coast TPO analyzed Brevard County fatal and serious injury crash data from 2018 to 2022 to understand where crashes occur and evaluate other crash characteristics. This analysis helped identify countermeasures and strategies for the updated action plan. Revisiting the crash data annually helps track the progress of the action plan and the advancement towards the goal of zero death and serious injuries. In 2024, 82 people died and 372 were seriously injured on our roads. But compared to previous years, this is an average 12% decrease in fatalities and serious injuries. Here we have the year-by-year breakdown of those numbers compared to the average from 2020 through 2023. We saw 11% decrease in fatalities and a 12% decrease in serious injuries. Vulnerable road users make up 37% of fatalities and serious injuries. While they are underrepresented on our roadways, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists are more likely to be in a higher severity crash. Looking at the 2024 crash data overview, 40% of crashes are intersection related, 30% are lane departure related, 30% are attributed to aging road users, or 20%, excuse me, 16% to speeding and aggressive driving, 14% to distracted driving, 13% to driving while impaired, and 11% to lack of vehicle occupant protection. While there's still work to be done, we are moving in the right direction and we are making progress to ensure that Vision Zero becomes a reality. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, for the sake of time, as we've already had discussion on this, we're going to make sure that we get Vision Zero put back on the agenda so we can dive into this further. In the meantime, I'm asking that if you guys have direct questions, that you get those to Patty so that we can make sure to incorporate those, add those to the conversation, kind of think about it, digest, review what you've got. Because we do have to adjourn on time, and it is
my email is in the package,
yes,
so you can always directly email me.
Yes, please, you guys see her email on screen, please take a moment to jot that down, think about that, so that way when we add that to the agenda, we can have that robust and broad conversation and continue the good conversations that we did start with what we talked about today.
That will not be the August agenda because we need to do Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan on North Merritt Island because those work orders are done for the August, but we will get a Vision Zero item where we have more time when we're not doing required documents like the list of project priorities and more.
Okay, with that, it is 7 o'clock on the dot. So I am going to adjourn the meeting. We will see you guys next month, Monday, August 25th. So thank you very much.
I did break the law.
There's a lot to cover on this one. Yeah, there was a lot on this
Everybody's gonna see
That's good. Yeah. Especially.
Surely.